Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to paint a peafowl in oil paints. This video is brought to you by Gloves in a Bottle, and they are a shielding cream company. You only need a tiny little bit, and what this does is it puts a barrier of kind of protection on your skin. It is fragrance free, it's got a short ingredients list. It'll stay on for about 4 washings or so, but what I really like is that once I rub this in, I can actually, you know, like scroll through things on my smartphone without leaving a streak. I can handle my watercolor paper without leaving like any residue. It's just a really nice lotion, and it's designed to keep chemicals and stuff from absorbing into your skin. So it's perfect for crafters and artists and mechanics, anybody that wants a non-greasy lotion that will protect their skin. So it keeps the good stuff in, keeps the bad stuff out, and I've been using it for a couple of weeks, and I really like it. Whenever I go back to my regular thick hand cream, it almost feels like I'm wearing Crisco. So this is really nice, and I have a 20% off coupon code in the video description, Crafter1, and a link where you can buy this size bottle on Amazon, or you can pick it up at Jerry's Autorama, or most of your neighborhood drugstores carry it. So I thank them for their support. That's called Gloves in a Bottle. We're going to begin by sketching on our panel. I am using water-mixable oils. These are the Berlin oils. These are from Jerry's Autorama. I'm not sure if other stores carry that, but that's where I got mine. And I'm not exactly sure what colors I'm going to end up using, and I didn't want to waste your time squeezing out paint, so I put some there right on my palette. And this is just a glass plate. Now these are water mixable oils, but still I use my oil plate palette for putting them out there. I also use my regular oil brushes for these, so you do not have to you don't have to get like a separate set of brushes for water mixable oils versus your regular oils. You can use the same. I wouldn't use your watercolor brushes or your acrylic brushes on this, but you can use your water mixables. I'm going to start off with the head. I'm going to put in a kind of like egg shaped. Hopefully that's dark enough for you to see it. I think it is. Then I'm going to get this kind of another kind of a lobe shape here, and then another one in back. Got some foreshortening here. I think I might want to make things a little bit larger too, now that I've got that basic shape down. I like to sketch with an oil pastel because even though these are water mixable oils, I still find that they dissolve the oil pastel really well. Get the beak in there. Always better to go a little smaller on a beak than too big, because they can look kind of awkward if you have them the wrong size. And I think I'll bring that down a little bit so it's a little off center there. And I don't really need to sketch in any other details at this point. I'm just going to make sure that my shape is fairly accurate. The eye will be right about there. And I don't want to put the plumage up there yet, because that could just get kind of messy. So I'm just kind of... I've got a reference photo that I will link in the video description as well from Paint My Photo. I'm just kind of like looking at my reference photo and seeing how far the chest extends. It's about the same length as the beak, so I just want to make sure I get that accurate. And yeah, now I think I can start to add some paint. I'm working on a Senseo painting panel. These are a clear primed linen panel for all media, well, like acrylics or oils, and I really like having that. I like the texture of it, and I like the I just like the raw look of the canvas. So I don't want to cover up all of that necessarily. I'm going to start off with I want to make some gray. I want a cool gray, so I'm going to start off with some ultramarine blue, and I'm going to add in some burnt umber. This is the basic set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 colors. No black, which I love because I never use a black, so it just goes to waste. So so that's the set that I'm using. It wasn't very expensive, so so I urge you to check it out. And I like to get my darks in first, because I find that with oil paints, white is just really strong. White can overtake another color really easily, so I like to kind of get my darks in there first and then add my whites to it. I keep having to remember that I want to leave some of that linen color showing, so I'm trying not to get too carried away. Now I'm just gonna, and I put 2 squirts of white down because I I always kind of get them contaminated, so I just want to avoid that. And so rather than putting one big blob of white, because I know I'll go through quite a bit, I'll just do 2 smaller blobs. And that's something else you might want to consider when you are buying oil paint, probably acrylic too. I don't work in acrylic that much, but buy an extra large tube of white. And I found a really large tube, I wish I could remember the brand, of water-mixable white, Permabella maybe? And so that was really nice. That's really nice to have because it seems like I run out of the white in my like oil painting sets more than anything else. I like the texture I'm getting there. I'm using a short-handled brush because I'm sitting. I'm not standing at an easel. When I'm at an easel, I use my long-handled brushes. I probably will grab these at some point because I love these Black Swan brushes for blending, like my final layers. But in case you're wondering why, you know, you usually see oil painters and most oil painting brushes are long. But if you sit and paint at a table, you'll probably appreciate having a short-handled brush better. The stroke here, where I'm just kind of crisscrossing and dabbing, this is called scrumbling, and it just gives you a beautiful texture. You can do this project in any sort of opaque media. I think anytime you see like a tutorial for acrylics or oils or gouache, you can transfer that into the media that you prefer to use, any opaque media. So if you want to do this in soft pastel, you can. If you want to do it in oil pastel, you can. If you want to do it in acrylic, if you want to do it in gouache, casein, whatever opaque media you like, feel free to adapt it and try it. I think I'm going to feather this out a little bit more because I went right over the edge on that one. So I'm not going to try to cover it absolutely perfectly, but I feel like I've got this. Maybe I'll lighten it up over there. I feel like I've just got this hard edge over there. So these are water mixable oils, but I try not to thin them down with water. And just like when you're using acrylics, you don't want to really thin them down with much water because you could underbind them. And I kind of worry about that happening too with the water mixable oils. So I'm just trying to use, when I want to blend more, when I want to push my paint thinner, I just tend to use a stiffer brush that can handle moving the paint around. Okay, so now I want to start kind of blocking in the body. I'm going to go in with my brown here. You can always mix later with oils. That is the great thing about oil paints, is that you can always blend later. You've got a long dry time. Some oil paints dry quicker than others. You'll at least have, you know, your entire painting session to be blending. I know, like, I also use a Lucas 1862 oils. They're dry to the touch in like 24 or 72 hours, so they do dry fairly quickly, but they're not going to dry while you're blending them. I like to kind of go in and let the colors mix on the canvas a little bit because I feel that I can keep my colors a little bit fresher that way. Okay. And I kind of refine as I go. I'm constantly looking back and forth at my reference photo to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. And this is a number 10 round Winsor Newton Artisan, which is Artisan is the Winsor Newton's line of water mixable. I do like their brushes. Winsor Newton makes really nice, their Winton and their Artisan brushes are really nice, and I can't tell you when I got these. If you take care of your brushes and oils, they will last you a long time. It is not, people are afraid of oils, but they are less damaging to your brushes than acrylics, as long as you get the right brushes for them and you take care to clean them. And if you don't like the idea of dealing with solvents, then the water mixable oils are ideal. So what I'm doing here is I want to put some of the texture of the feathers down. I'm going to go in with some yellow ochre, get some of that texture on its own. The thing that's going to be really the most in focus and important part of the painting is going to be the face. So I don't need to have all these feathers super detailed. They're there, they're supporting actors, you know, they're going to make the star of the show shine, which will be the lovely face on our peafowl. I don't know if it's probably a peahen. I don't see, it's a close-up photo. I can't tell if it's got the big plumes in the back or not. Oh, if you're a watercolorist, this would be difficult to follow this technique to do in watercolor because I'm doing a technique for opaque media. But if you do watercolor, I do have a peacock tutorial in watercolor, a long real-time one if you're interested. So now I want to go in with some lighter color. I also think I want a different shape brush. So I am going to go with a flat. And I'm just looking through my thing of brushes. I still want something that's going to be fairly stiff. I'm actually going to try this one. This is a brush that was left in water too long. You can see by all of the paint chipping and the ferrule has become loose. So don't leave your brushes in water. In fact, I'm going to set that right across my water bucket and wash it all out when I'm done. I'm not going to leave it in the water. This is a synthetic brush, but since it actually used to be an acrylic brush, I mistreated it so badly. So the bristle's actually fairly stiff, so I can use it for this. Once you've used it with oils, though, you really ought to keep it with oils. So since I have that layer of paint underneath, it's a lot easier to lay down more color because it wants to glide across the subsequent layer that you've already put, or the previous layer, I mean. So I'm just putting little taps of my white, and you can see it is mixing. It doesn't look stark white because it's mixing. So you'll want to have a rag handy, and you can wipe off your brush if it gets really muddy. Pick up some more color. So this is kind of like how brushes go in my house. If they're watercolor brushes and they started out as watercolor brushes and I like them as watercolor brushes, they're always watercolor brushes. But then I buy some that are acrylic brushes, and they don't seem to last as long. You know, maybe some paint dries in them, or they just lose their edge, or for whatever reason. Acrylic's just harder on your brushes. So after they outlive their useful life as an acrylic brush, then they go in my oil brush jar, because I find that oils are less finicky. They're less picky as to what brushes you use. You can get by with some cheap brushes in oils as long as they don't shed. That's pretty much what you want to look for with brushes. Make sure they don't shed. You will want some nice fine ones for like details, but for like stuff like this, putting in big textures like this, look, I'm using this ratty old thing and I'm liking the texture. In fact, sometimes it's preferable to have those cruddy old brushes, because then they will they'll give you some interesting textures. Now, once a brush is really beat up and I can't possibly use it in oils anymore, I wash it super duper good. I get all of any possible oil residue out of it, because then it actually returns to being a watercolor brush, and I'll use it for scrubbing or for special effects. But you just want to make sure you do clean all that oil out if you're going to do that. That way you won't have to worry about it transferring onto your watercolor paper. Okay, so now that we're getting up in this area, we've got some greens and beautiful blues that we're going to get in there. Get a little bit more of those feathers. I'm kind of patting the paint in, because I don't want it to get too mixed. But I don't want it to be too bright. I don't want to paint it on really thick and have it too bright. I want these feathers a little smaller, so I'm just going to keep patting. The reason I sketch with oil pastel, another reason, is that you're not going to have any lines ghosting through if you were to sketch with a pen, or you might get lines ghosting through. You can also use charcoal, but that's really black, and that might mix with your paint and give you a darker color than you want. So I just want to kind of give you that information. So this is a phthalo green PG7. You could use Viridian too if you have it, but phthalo green is cheaper. And usually what you'll find in your student paints, or in most paint sets, they'll throw phthalo green in rather than Viridian, because it's just cheaper to make. So I'm just patting this in. I think I want a different brush. I think I might need to even change the shape of this a little bit. I feel like it's supposed to go out and come in more. And then I think I need to add a little bit more dark. This is another good thing about working with an opaque media like this, is that you can go in and you can alter and you can redefine if you need to. And now that I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the back. I think the back is too high. So I'm going to pick up some white and pull that background down a little bit more. I'm going to grab a fresh brush because I've got some yellow ochre on that. And that yellow ochre is not matching with my background. It's always important to look at how things relate to other things in your picture to get your to get an accurate sketch as well. And I rushed it a little bit, I think. That back should be a little bit lower. I'm just going to let it blend in, and I can redefine the back later once I get everything else situated that I'm working on. So there we go. See, teachable moments, guys. I love the teachable moments. I'm not loving this for the green feathers, so I am going to use something else. These are the soft grip brushes. I got this a long time ago. These are kind of nice. They have acrylic handles, so if you are prone to leaving your brushes in water, it does help you out a little bit that way. And they also, they're available for different mediums, so they're about $3 a piece too, so they're not too pricey. I'm just dabbing in this green. This is a transparent green. You may think that like all oil paints are opaque, but that's not the case. It depends on the pigments that are used. Oil itself, linseed oil, or whatever or walnut oil, or whatever they're using for the binder, is transparent. So the pigment is going to make it transparent or opaque. Same thing with acrylics. And we are at the hot mess stage of the painting, which I've talked about before. That's the part of the painting, where you're like, oh boy, how are you gonna fix this, Lindsay? It's, but we will fix it. It'll be fine. If you're watching this on YouTube, it turned out okay. Otherwise, I would have done it over. Okay, and I think while I'm at it, I'm going to get some of the other colors in the face. I'm going to switch brushes. I'm not washing my brushes and then using them again right away because I don't want to add water into my paint. I mean, it shouldn't hurt anything if it's not too much, but I like to err on the side of caution there with making sure I'm not underbinding. And also, if you get a paint too watery, sometimes it wants to lift what's underneath. I don't have a bunch of layers going, but still, I don't want to end up with, you know, streaky, soupy paint. Oh, I think I made the head a little too big on the back. That's why it was acting a little freaky. That's why it's looking a little weird. Okay, going for a finer brush. You can see how much more white we use as opposed to other colors when we oil paint, because we don't have the white of the paper like we do when we're doing watercolor. So I might go in with a synthetic. I'll show you the difference here. This is a synthetic. It's very soft versus the hog. So when you're in an area where you need to do detail, like I have here, it's easier to get those bristles to stick together on a synthetic brush, because the bristles are a little softer and more flexible. With the little crop there. And see, it wants to just gently push a paint around. Now, it's not going to push a lot of paint around like a hog brush will. So, you know, so there are trade-offs. There are, of course, brushes that are synthetic that are a little stiffer. You just need to match the paint with the brush with the paint that you're using. Okay, and now I'm going to get some of that. I'm going to take some of the burnt umber. Whoops, I didn't. I'm going to grab a little bit of this. Actually, let's try adding a little yellow to that. There we go. I just wanted more of a burnt sienna color, and that yellow is bringing out, this is like a cadmium yellow, it's bringing out enough of that, the red, the lighter color in that brown to give me the color I need. And I want to put that on top of the white. I might need to add a little red in there, but I'm just going to get the top of that head in because it's kind of bugging me, looking at, you know, Ichabod Crane up there with no head. Ichabod Peafowl. All right, that's a little bit better. And I generally will, especially if I'm painting an easel, I have like 20 brushes in my hand that I keep switching back and forth from with different colors. And this is still the blocking in phase. But I do want to make sure that I have my shapes fairly accurately, because if you don't have it drawn, the drawing is the foundation. If you don't have it sketched on right to begin with, it's kind of difficult to overcome that, and it's better to mess around with it and get it right at the beginning when you haven't invested that much time than it is to wait till the end. You can correct things in oils pretty easily because you can blend stuff out. I think maybe I need that to go in a little bit more. If you end up with some paint that you wished you hadn't applied, you can wipe it away a bit. What you want to do is just pull off the biggest part of the paint you want to remove, and then go back in with your background color, which was the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. And it's better to have a little bit more background, have your focal image a little smaller, because you can always make it bigger. Okay, you can always throw a little bit more feather in there. And I'm just picking up that white too. Lighten up that area. I know it looks a little weird, but it'll get there. It will get better. Okay, I'm going to take another look at this area here, because I'm feeling maybe I need a little bit more, I need to elongate, or I need to thin out this part of the neck just a little bit. I highly recommend, if you're painting along with me, that you follow the link for the reference photo and you print it out so that you can look at that as well. I can't show it to you on screen because as part of Paint My Photo, the photographers give us permission to use their photographs, but you have to go to the site to download them for yourself. But it's free. It's free to use. It's a free membership. And I highly recommend any artist to check it out. Okay, there we go. This is much better now. I still think I might want a little bit of this cadmium red hue, just because I think it's going to be a little bit more useful than crimson. I better do a little bit more. And I'm going to grab a little more white while I'm at it. I don't like to put out too much more paint than I think I'm going to use because I hate to waste it. So I'm going to give myself another little squirt of white. Alright, now I want to brighten up the neck feathers. So I am going to go back in here. I'm going to grab some lemon yellow. And let's see what that does. I think I'm going to need some white in there, but let's just see what it does on its own first. You want to make sure that you are putting your strokes down in the direction that the feathers would come, because you want kind of an economy of brush strokes if you want to keep your work looking fresh. So kind of like an impressionistic style, you want to convey as much as you can with those brush strokes. And you can see how cumbersome the longer, even though it's not that much longer, it's about 3 inches longer than a regular brush. It's kind of cumbersome when you're sitting down at the table to have a longer brush. I'm working on the corner of the brush now, on the skinny side, and just tapping in the smaller feathers, because as you get closer to the head, the feathers are going to be smaller. Okay, and I want some bluer feathers in here. This cerulean blue here, I think it's cerulean, it looks like cerulean. It's, oh, it's actually, yeah, cerulean. It's actually a little too light, so I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to see what kind of color I get with the, and this is a really short handle brush. I'm going to see what I get with the ultramarine and the Viridian, because I think the cerulean is just going to make things too light right now. So I'm going to go in first with this and get some of these lighter shades. And this is a synthetic brush. It is just very gently going to lay down color. It doesn't take very much pressure because I'm going on top of some wet paint. And I have to keep reloading because it mixes in with the paint underneath, and then you lose that dark. I can extend some of these green colors down. I'm going to want to go with a bigger brush for that though. Now I think I will use the same brush to do some white, though, some white and yellow mix. Wipe off the extra stuff and grab some white. I don't know if I really need to mix it with the yellow because I've got a lot of yellow down there already, and I'm just gonna add those lighter feathers in. The key is to let some of these other colors also show through, so you're not just covering everything up with one color. I think I'm actually going to try a filbert because I want to have that feathery shape. Let me see if I have a small filbert, small-ish. I've got this one here. I like these Black Swan brushes quite a bit. They're very, very soft. They mimic they're like a faux red squirrel. So, and sometimes you want those really soft brushes for oils. Get these bigger feathers down here with that. And as I start to run out of color, I'm going onto some of the other parts of the bird's chest, because you will get those colors there as well. And I can work on the tip of the brush. Really just kind of brush on both of the sides to kind of point that a little bit, and I can pull in. If you get a color that's too bright, just tap on it and it will soften it. So now I want to bring in some of the yellower petals as we go down. I'm going to grab a little bit of that cad yellow and then grab a little bit of the yellow ochre too. So I've got this just really warm yellow that I've been using, comprised of yellows I've been using throughout the painting, so it'll feel nice and coordinated. And I'm just going to throw that in here and there. You see some of this color faintly on some of the feathers. Adding a little bit of white to that. As I move over here, I want it to kind of stand out from the background a little bit on this side. Okay, and I think I want a little bit of green in some of these too. But I think, well, let's see what I can do with this. We've got a lot of whites and yellows and stuff in there, so the green isn't going to be quite as vibrant. And a lot of times when I'm painting something, I'm looking at the balance of my picture as well as the reference photo. So look at your picture, say, where does it need this? Where does it need that? It might not be exactly what your reference photo is, but that's all right. That's the art of it. Just want to make sure over here I don't have a hard edge. I am kind of pushing the color up a little bit more than what I say just because I like color, but you can do whatever you like. Now something I want to try, I want to see this color with a little bit of the other colors added to it and see what I get, because I do like that tone of that blue, and I feel like I do need a little bit of that color in some of these feathers, maybe with a smaller brush. It's kind of a low chroma color, cerulean, so you have to be careful that you don't let it get muddy. I'm going to go back to this little synthetic. A little bit in there too. It's really fun playing with these paints. It's kind of almost like butter because they're so kind of creamy and luxurious feeling. Okay. Just want to get that S of the neck enhanced a little bit. Alright, so now I need to make some cool gray. I'm going to go with a white and a little ultramarine blue. A little more white in there. And this is where I'm going to kind of suggest the back of the bird here. I think I need to go with a larger brush. Let's try this one. This is a Black Swan number 8 flat. It's about 1/4 of an inch. And this is just kind of that cool, because you're getting some reflections from the neck, you're getting some reflections from the daylight. And I'm actually going to tip my canvas a little bit and just kind of tap in a highlight, but also so it can kind of indicate the fact that these are feathers back there. And if I keep working it down without adding new paint, then it gives me kind of that natural kind of highlight and shadow. You get too much, just tap it until it is where you want it to be. Just try to get that shimmer of feather. Okay, now that same color, I think I'm going to go and work on the beak, because the beak is a little reflective, so you're going to have those same colors in there. And remember, if you have white underneath, it's really going to kind of take over. So that's just something to consider. If you feel like you're not putting any paint down, but you just loaded up your brush, it's probably because you have white paint underneath and it's just making it a little bit more difficult. Getting some shadows while I'm at it. And don't forget, if you get too much paint on your brush, just wipe it off. I just wipe it off. I try not to wash them till the end. And get a little bit sharper color up here. And you can always, if you feel like your paint's just too wet and you can't get in and do what you want, you can always let it go until the next day. Let the paint set up a little bit. Or let it dry completely and then come back to it. So no art police saying you have to finish it in one go. Okay, Now I want some darker color. I'm going to go right in with my ultramarine blue mixed with the burnt umber. And I am using a stiff brush here. I'm dabbing because I want the tiny feathers, get that tiny feather texture in here. And I'm gonna dab up here. And over here's where we're gonna have the little feathers coming up. You want to get rid of those hard smooth lines if you have hard smooth lines in here. And you can do that just by tapping. See that? It just kind of makes it fluffy. Fluff it up. Fluff, fluff, fluff. I hope you like the real-time tutorial. If you prefer speed paint when I'm doing oils, please let me know in the comments below, because I certainly could do that if that's more preferable. So far, most people say they prefer the real-time tutorials because it's kind of like having a class, and I am happy to do that as long as that's what people want. Doesn't matter much to me. I can gab while I'm painting. I can gab later. Either way. Adding some shadows here in the feathers. Doing almost like little bendy, just curved strokes. Most of the colors that I have here in this set, I believe, are single pigments. At least the ones I peeked at were. So it kind of allows you to have more paints out and not get mud. Unless, of course, you drop your brush on your painting, then there's no help for you. They can't be responsible for that. I love making my black with ultramarine blue and either burnt sienna or burnt umber because it gives you a natural color, and you can make it warmer or cooler, and it harmonizes with everything else because they're such handy colors for tinting the other things on your palette as well. Oh, and if you want to use a disposable palette, that's totally fine. Do whatever you like. With the water mixable oils, all I have to do is wipe this out, spritz it with water, and wipe it again, and I'm clean and ready to go. So these dark colors I'm putting here are kind of like the deepest values, the deepest shadows. You probably will need to either wipe your brush or reload more often because it's going to mix in with your lighter colors, and that's what it does. That's what it's supposed to do. Don't worry, that's what's supposed to happen. I will be switching to a larger brush in a minute when I need to get into a little more, when I want to get like larger shadows. And I will be going to a smoother brush when I'm ready to work up here, a softer brush when I'm ready to work up here and do some more details. But right now I'm trying to get the bigger stuff done. So I'm going to go to this brush and wipe off that blue paint that I had, the blue and green. And I find that I can wipe off most of the paint that I need to, so I don't have to wash it in between. If you were doing oils, you definitely want to do this as opposed to, you could rinse it in your thinner, but I don't know, I just don't like to have watery paint, and sometimes I just like the way the brushes feel better this way. You do it however you want to do, experiment, figure out what you like best, but that would be my advice. And here I'm doing the same thing I was doing before, except I'm using the bigger brush because the feathers are bigger down on the bigger part of the body. So it also keeps you from keeps your painting from being really flat and one-dimensional. And I love seeing these individual brush strokes. It's almost like pointillism, except we're not using just dots, we're using all sorts of shapes, but it keeps a freshness, I think. Use a lot more paint than we do in watercolors, huh? Okay. All right, I want to work on the face a bit. I am going to find that nice soft brush that I was using. I think it was this, was it this one? No, it's this one right here. Now at this point, when you are working with a really fine soft brush, you can use a little thinner if you want to. I am going to rinse that off. I get asked this question a lot about my water buckets, and yes, I will use the same water buckets I use with watercolor or any water soluble media with my water mixable oils, and then after I'm done painting, I'll rinse them out real good, wash them with some soap and water so that there's no oily residue, and I haven't had a problem. So if you were wondering about that, yeah, go ahead and use the same buckets that you normally use if you want to, or you could have separate ones if you prefer. It's up to you. So when we're doing details, you generally are using a softer brush, and sometimes you need thinner paint, just like if you were working with acrylics. I am going to actually zoom in a bit, and then we're going to work on the face. I'm going to start with this nice dark. It's the mix of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And I didn't add any water to this. I did clean my brush off, but I wiped it off before I dipped it in. But if you feel like your paint's dragging, then you can go ahead and use either a thinner if you're using traditional oils, or a little bit of water if you're using water mixable oils. I am going to, since I have quite a bit of paint on that beak, I'm going to go ahead and just paint on it with that dark color, because I think it's going to mix with what's underneath pretty well. I might look for a skinnier brush. I'm not sure if I have one for oil. Oh yeah, I do. I have this one right here. And this one will give me a really nice point. Just gotta make sure you clean them well when you're done using them, just like anything. It's much more important to clean your brushes properly with oils or acrylics than it is with watercolor, because watercolor you can just, rinse out and put them away. With the oils and acrylics, you want to take care to clean them properly. I also want to get some ultramarine blue and right on that dirty brush, so it's kind of grayed, and some white, because I want to get that daylight highlight, and that's kind of the color of the light in my painting. And I'm going to need some white on its own, I think. And a little bit of yellow ochre on the tip with some white. On the tip of the beak, that is. Because it's got a little bit of a color there that I want to make sure I get represented. And take your time. I mean, oils are so, they're such a pleasure to paint with, and I feel like they're almost meditative. And I think maybe that's why I don't get on with acrylics so well, because I just feel like it's a race against the clock with acrylics, and I just feel like I have all the time in the world when I'm working with oils. So what I'm doing here is just some little strokes for the little feathers, because I don't want it to look like a cartoon. I don't want it to look like, the head was just cut and pasted on the top of the body. Okay, I'm going to clean that off because I got them kind of muddy there. I only bring in the real tiny brushes at the end. I think you can get really fussy with little brushes if you go in too early. I try to approach the whole painting as one part and get all the big parts in there accurately before I go and mess with anything tiny, any tiny details. I think it's where people get into some issues sometimes, is they're so anxious to get to the detail, to get to the good stuff, that they kind of rush through, and their drawing might not be accurate, and then that gives them problems down the road. I need a little bit of a shadow color for under this little tuft of feathers. Just little dabs, don't rush it. And remember, if you do lose white and you can't get it back because you have too much paint on there, you can always let it dry and come back later. Because you might find that in these areas where you want it really, really white that you can't, you're just mixing in too many other colors and it's a little too small of an area to wipe it out and go back in. So don't fret if that happens to you. Now I feel like I want a pop of color to kind of make it, make everything sing a little bit. So I'm going to take that bright red, that cadmium red, I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt umber and yellow ochre, and I'm going to add that just here and there. I might need a little more brown in there. I don't want it to look like it's injured. But the red is the opposite of green, so it kind of makes your colors seem a little more vibrant when you employ a color like that. And I'm going to do the yellow ochre, a little more yellow ochre into that reddish color. And I'm going to add some teeny little feathers up here on the top of the head where we did all those dark dots. All right, now we've got the we've got our little plume. And you want your really fine brush here, and you're barely just grazing the paper, the canvas rather. If you feel like you can't get your paint to move, add a little bit of thinner, add a little bit of paint thinner or water if you're using water mixables. Remember, you don't need to have like a constant line either. Our brains will fill in the rest. We don't have to have a stem to every one of these little floofies. And I think I want to do a little color up there, even though there isn't a lot of color in the reference photo. I think I want to do, we'll start off with this cerulean. And I'm going to add some green into it. Remember, we can always mute it down. And I think I will grab a little bit of that reddy mix, that reddish mix. And that's going to tone it down a bit because it's mixing in. Instead of being right next to it, it's mixing in with it, so it's toning it down a little bit, but it's still keeping it nice and colorful. Alright, so now I'm going to see how much more detail the face needs. I'm going to go in with my white on that same little round brush. I am going to add the rim around the eyelid here, and just in little dots. And you don't really see much of that above the eye, just on the bottom rim. And I want to add the highlight in the eye. I always think that eye highlight, I try to save it to last because I think it really pulls a piece together. And then some more highlighting on the beak. So as you progress in your painting, you're putting down much less paint per stroke. Using a smaller brush, everything becomes very deliberate. And I highly recommend just like really detailing one section of the painting. Because that way you can keep that fresh look that you've been cultivating throughout the piece, and it just looks really nice. I also want to do a little bit of highlighting at the base of the floof up here. It helps give it a little bit of movement, a little bit of attention, maybe just some little highlighted feathers up here. And then maybe just a little bit of highlight, wiping off my brush, a little bit of highlight in the little featheries. I think I'll just use white because there's a lot of color. Remember, we put a lot of color up there, so maybe just a little bit of, just some strokes for some movement. This is your painting. You do what you want to do. Make a fantasy bird if you want to. It doesn't have to be just like mine. Everyone's is going to be a little different. All right, so now I'm going to look at my picture here and figure out what I want to do. So at this point, I'm just kind of looking for anything I think needs to be changed or needs to be slightly adjusted, and I am only going to do small little adjustments at this point. So if I'm looking and realizing that something needs a highlight, I'll do it now. If something just like I'm noticing that over here, this whole beak area should probably be brightened up a little bit. He looks like he's smiling. He's a happy little, or she, happy little peahen. Because I think it's a peahen. I think that a peacock would be way brighter. And brighten that up there. Brighten up behind the eyes a little bit. I want the attention to come to the face. And I think I also want a little bit of highlight here on the chest and a little bit on the back of the neck. I think I'm going to stick with this brush though, because I can't do too much damage with it, quite frankly. And I don't want to add too much of anything really at this point. So I'm just going to kind of go in and bring in those highlights. Just like it's always like, you know, you put mascara on, you're just putting some color on the tips of those eyelashes. That's kind of what I'm doing here. It's like a little butterfly kiss on these feathers. If I do too much, it's gonna look like she's all ruffled and she's just fluffed her feathers out. I don't really want that look so much. I just kind of want a nice little break it apart from the background type highlight. And that pretty much does it. If you want to go back in with any of the colors, if you wanted like just some little bits of brighter green gold or something, you can go in and add that too. But I wouldn't get too carried away because you don't want to pull focus away from the face. So I think I'm just going to leave mine alone, sign it, and call it a day. My hands are going to be really easy to clean because I used lotion from our sponsor, Gloves in a Bottle. This makes a great gift for anybody that works with their hands, anybody that's working in chemicals all day. And the thing I really like about it is if I wash my hands, I can actually open a door. Have you ever done that? You've used the restroom and you've washed your hands, you put lotion on, then you realize you're trapped in the bathroom because your hands are too slippery that you can't open the door. This will help you avoid that. I keep a bottle next to all of my sinks so that after I wash my hands I can put this on. I only need to put it on about once every 4 or 5 hand washings, and I've been using it for a couple of weeks and I'm really happy with it. So give it a try if you are looking for something to kind of act as a barrier between you and all the crafty stuff you get into. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about any of the products that I used here or any of the techniques, go ahead and leave them in the video description. And you can also let me know if you would prefer a speed paint for these oils because I know they get a little bit long. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Until next time, happy crafting.